Have you noticed certain items missing from your grocery store lately? What you're seeing isn't random. It's the beginning of something much bigger. Right now, food distribution networks are facing unprecedented challenges that most shoppers don't even realize. Behind the scenes, suppliers are quietly preparing for what industry insiders are calling the most significant grocery shortage event in recent history. By September 2025, 10 essential grocery items could become nearly impossible to find on store shelves. This isn't speculation. It's based on current supply chain data, manufacturing reports, and distributor alerts that rarely reach the public. The families who understand what's happening now will have a huge advantage over those caught off guard later. While others search empty aisles wondering what happened, prepared shoppers will already have what they need. Today, I'm sharing the exact 10 items that supply chain experts are most concerned about. Some will surprise you, especially number 7, which is probably in your pantry right now. This isn't about creating panic or encouraging hoarding. It's about making informed decisions based on real information. If you want to stay ahead of these changes and protect your family's food security, you're in the right place. Let's dive into what you need to know before it's too late. 1. Premium cooking oils. The cooking oils in your pantry are about to transform from everyday essentials into precious commodities, and this shift is happening with alarming speed. We're witnessing a convergence of factors that's creating the perfect storm for cooking oil shortages, unlike anything we've seen in modern grocery history. The situation isn't just about minor supply hiccups or temporary price adjustments. We're looking at fundamental disruptions that could leave cooking oil shelves barren for months. The crisis begins with catastrophic agricultural failures across multiple continents. South America's oilseed production has been devastated by an unprecedented series of weather disasters. Argentina, traditionally one of the world's most reliable sunflower oil suppliers, is reporting harvest numbers that would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago. Their sunflower crop yields have plummeted by nearly 40%, with entire growing regions experiencing complete crop failures due to prolonged drought followed by destructive flooding. Meanwhile, palm oil plantations across Indonesia and Malaysia are grappling with their own environmental nightmare. Extreme weather patterns have wiped out thousands of acres of mature palm trees, and the survivors are producing significantly less oil than normal. Industry reports indicate that Southeast Asian palm oil output has crashed by more than 25% compared to previous years, creating a massive gap in global supply that cannot be quickly filled. The transportation crisis compounds these production problems exponentially. Ocean freight costs for edible oils have skyrocketed to levels that make many imports economically impossible. Smaller oil producers who previously exported their products worldwide are now forced to serve only their domestic markets, further tightening global supply. Container availability remains critically low, and when shipping space is available, priority goes to higher-value cargo, often leaving cooking oils stranded at ports. Distribution warehouses across North America are already seeing dramatic inventory drops. Industry insiders report that premium cooking oil stocks are down more than 50% compared to normal levels, with specialty oils like avocado, walnut, and cold-pressed olive oils becoming increasingly difficult to source. When September arrives, expect to see entire sections of the cooking oil aisle completely empty, with remaining products priced at levels that will shock even prepared consumers. 2. Specialty flours and baking ingredients. The foundation of home baking is crumbling, literally. The flour shortage developing across North America represents one of the most significant threats to home kitchens in decades, and it's being driven by a complex web of agricultural disasters, supply chain disruptions, and changing global trade patterns that most consumers don't even realize exist. Wheat production worldwide is facing its most challenging period in recent memory. The ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe continues to disrupt wheat exports from Ukraine and Russia, 2 countries that together supply nearly 1/3 of global wheat trade. But the problems extend far beyond geopolitical issues. North American wheat-growing regions are experiencing their own agricultural crisis that's receiving surprisingly little public attention. The Great Plains states, America's wheat heartland, have been battered by extreme weather events that have decimated crop yields. Kansas, typically responsible for about 15% of U.S. wheat production, is reporting harvest numbers down by almost half compared to normal years. The state's wheat fields have endured everything from severe drought conditions that stunted plant growth to unexpected late-season floods that destroyed mature crops ready for harvest. Nebraska, Oklahoma, and North Dakota are all reporting similarly devastating losses. These production shortfalls are hitting specialty flours the hardest. Flour mills are being forced to prioritize their most basic products just to meet essential demand, which means specialty flours are becoming increasingly scarce. Bread flour, with its higher protein content essential for proper gluten development, is already difficult for commercial bakeries to source consistently. Whole wheat flour, pastry flour, and other specialized varieties are becoming luxury items that many mills simply cannot afford to produce given current wheat prices. The situation becomes even more dire when we examine alternative flours and baking ingredients. Almond flour production is being hammered by California's ongoing water crisis, which has forced many almond growers to abandon their orchards entirely. Coconut flour relies on imports from tropical regions that are dealing with their own weather-related production problems. Even basic baking essentials like vanilla extract are facing severe shortages, as Madagascar's vanilla farms struggle with climate-related crop failures and political instability. Chemical components used in baking powder and other leavening agents are becoming more expensive and harder to source as industrial supply chains face their own disruptions. The convergence of all these factors means that by September, home bakers may find themselves unable to source the ingredients they need for even the most basic recipes, turning baking from a beloved hobby into an expensive luxury. 3. Bife in imported seasonings and spices. The aromatic world of spices and seasonings is about to experience a seismic shift that will fundamentally change how we think about flavoring our food. The global spice trade, one of humanity's oldest international commerce networks, is facing disruptions so severe that even basic seasonings may become difficult to find and afford by early fall. The complexity of the global spice supply chain makes it uniquely vulnerable to the kind of widespread disruptions we're currently experiencing. Unlike crops that can be grown in multiple regions, many spices come from very specific geographic areas with climatic conditions that cannot be replicated elsewhere. When these regions face problems, there are no alternative sources to fill the gap, creating shortages that can last for years rather than months. India, which dominates global spice production by supplying nearly 3/4 of the world's seasonings, is experiencing agricultural chaos across multiple spice-growing states. Unpredictable monsoon patterns have created a cycle of drought and flooding that has devastated traditional growing regions. Turmeric farms in Andhra Pradesh, black pepper plantations in Kerala, and cardamom estates in Tamil Nadu are all reporting crop yields that are down by 30 to 50% compared to normal years. The timing of these weather disasters has been particularly devastating, often hitting crops just before harvest when losses are most complete. Vietnam's pepper farms, which supply much of the world's black pepper, are struggling with plant diseases and labor shortages that have reduced output significantly. Even more concerning, many traditional spice farmers are abandoning their crops entirely, switching to more profitable and less weather-dependent alternatives, which means that even when conditions improve, production capacity may not return to previous levels. The logistics of spice importation add another layer of complexity to these supply problems. Spices are considered low-priority cargo by shipping companies because they're lightweight and relatively inexpensive compared to other goods. When container space becomes limited and shipping costs rise, spice shipments are often the first to be delayed or canceled entirely. Port congestion, which continues to plague international trade, disproportionately affects spice imports because they're often shipped in smaller quantities that can't compete with larger, more valuable cargo for priority handling. Import companies are already warning retailers about dramatic price increases that haven't yet appeared on store shelves. Wholesale spice prices have doubled or even tripled for many varieties, but these increases are just beginning to filter through to consumer markets. When they do, shoppers will face sticker shock that will make them reconsider whether they can afford to properly season their food. Specialty spices like real saffron, whole cardamom pods, and complex spice blends that require ingredients from multiple countries will likely disappear from most grocery stores entirely, available only through specialty retailers at premium prices that put them out of reach for average families. 4C. Canned tomato products. The humble canned tomato is about to become one of the most coveted items in grocery stores, and this shortage will ripple through every American kitchen in ways most people haven't even considered yet. We're not just talking about your basic tomato sauce disappearing from shelves. We're looking at a comprehensive collapse of the entire canned tomato ecosystem that includes everything from paste and puree to specialty San Marzano varieties and even the ketchup that sits in your refrigerator door. California's stranglehold on American tomato processing is finally showing its weakness. The Golden State produces a staggering 96% of all processed tomatoes consumed in the United States, creating a dangerous single point of failure that's now coming back to haunt consumers. This year's water allocation crisis has forced tomato farmers to abandon nearly 35% of their typical planting acreage, but the real devastation is happening in the fields that are still being cultivated. Record-breaking heat waves are literally destroying crops before harvest, with temperatures so extreme that tomatoes are cooking on the vine during peak growing season. The processing infrastructure is crumbling under these pressures. Multiple tomato processing facilities have already announced early season closures because they cannot secure adequate raw materials to justify keeping their production lines running. Industry contracts that guarantee specific volumes to major grocery chains are being renegotiated or canceled entirely, leaving retailers scrambling to find alternative suppliers that simply don't exist at the scale needed. Italy's contribution to the global tomato crisis cannot be understated. The Po Valley, which has fed Europe's appetite for premium tomato products for generations, is experiencing its most severe drought in recorded history. Italian tomato production has plummeted by more than 45% compared to previous years, creating shortages that extend far beyond Europe's borders. American consumers who prefer Italian imported tomato products are already feeling the pinch, with prices doubling and availability becoming sporadic even at specialty retailers. The restaurant industry is already adapting to this reality in ways that foreshadow what's coming to home kitchens. Pizza chains are quietly reformulating their sauce recipes to use less tomato concentrate, while Italian restaurants are exploring entirely different approaches to classic dishes that have relied on consistent tomato availability for decades. When commercial food service operations struggle to source basic tomato products, you know the shortage has reached critical levels that will soon impact every household that depends on these pantry staples. 5. No uncertain dairy alternatives. The plant-based revolution that transformed coffee shops and health-conscious households is about to hit its biggest obstacle yet. Dairy alternatives, which seemed like an unstoppable trend just months ago, are facing supply chain disruptions so severe that your morning oat milk latte might become a luxury rather than a daily routine. The infrastructure that supports this industry is revealing itself to be far more fragile than anyone anticipated. Oat milk's meteoric rise is being met with an equally dramatic fall in availability. The specific oat varieties required for milk production aren't just any ordinary oats you might find in a breakfast bowl. These are specially cultivated strains that require precise growing conditions and specific harvesting techniques. Canada and Scandinavian countries, which supply the majority of these specialty oats, have experienced weather patterns so erratic that entire crops have been lost to unexpected flooding, followed by prolonged drought periods. The manufacturing bottleneck represents an even more serious threat to oat milk availability. The specialized equipment needed to transform oats into that creamy, barista-friendly consistency relies on custom-engineered components that are manufactured by only a handful of companies worldwide. When these machines break down, replacement parts can take 6 months or more to arrive, assuming they're available at all. Multiple oat milk producers are currently operating at severely reduced capacity, with some facilities completely shut down while waiting for critical components that may not arrive until next year. Almond milk production faces its own unique crisis rooted in California's water emergency. Almond trees are notoriously thirsty, requiring approximately 1 gallon of water to produce a single nut. With water costs reaching unprecedented levels and availability restrictions becoming more severe, many almond orchards are being abandoned entirely. Farmers are making the difficult decision to let mature trees die rather than pay water bills that exceed their potential revenue, permanently removing production capacity that takes years to replace. Soy and coconut alternatives are struggling with international shipping complications that have increased costs by 300% or more in some cases. Processing facilities are dealing with the same labor shortages and equipment reliability issues plaguing other food manufacturers, while raw material costs continue climbing due to agricultural pressures in producing regions. The convergence of these factors means that even the most common dairy alternatives could become premium products that many families simply cannot afford to purchase regularly. 6. Premium pet foods. Pet owners are about to face one of their worst nightmares as the specialty foods that keep their beloved animals healthy and happy become increasingly difficult to find. The pet food industry, often overlooked in discussions about food security, is experiencing supply chain disruptions that could have serious consequences for millions of pets who depend on specific dietary formulations for their health and well-being. The fundamental problem lies in ingredient sourcing. Premium pet foods rely on the same high-quality meat byproducts and specialty ingredients that human food manufacturers are competing for in increasingly tight markets. When beef, poultry, and fish supplies become constrained, pet food companies typically lose priority access to the choice cuts and byproducts their formulations require. This isn't just about feeding pets lower-quality food. It's about the complete unavailability of ingredients that make certain pet food products possible to manufacture at all. Veterinary nutritionists are already sounding alarms about what they're observing in the marketplace. Pet food manufacturers are quietly reformulating products without clear communication to consumers, sometimes changing key ingredients that can trigger allergic reactions or digestive issues in sensitive animals. Dogs and cats that have thrived on consistent diets for years are suddenly experiencing health problems because their familiar food has been altered to accommodate ingredient shortages, even when the packaging and branding remain unchanged. The situation becomes particularly dire for pets with special dietary needs. Animals requiring grain-free formulations, limited ingredient diets, or prescription foods for medical conditions depend on very specific ingredient combinations that are becoming impossible to source reliably. Some specialty manufacturers have already implemented allocation systems, limiting how much product veterinary clinics and specialty retailers can order, effectively rationing food for the animals that need it most. The premium segment of the pet food market is collapsing fastest because these products typically use more expensive, higher-quality ingredients that are becoming scarce first. Brands that built their reputations on using human-grade ingredients or exotic proteins are finding themselves unable to maintain their formulations, forcing them to either dramatically increase prices or temporarily discontinue products entirely. Unlike human food shortages where people can adapt their diets or find substitutes, pets cannot safely switch between dramatically different food formulations without risking serious health consequences, making this shortage particularly cruel for devoted pet owners who view their animals as family members. 7. Household cleaning products. The revelation about household cleaning products caught industry experts completely off guard, and it's about to blindside every family that depends on these essential items for maintaining basic hygiene and sanitation. What makes this shortage particularly insidious is how invisible the supply chain vulnerabilities have been to consumers who simply assumed their dish soap, laundry detergent, and disinfectants would always be available at reasonable prices. The chemical manufacturing industry operates on a scale that most people never consider. The active ingredients that make your all-purpose cleaner actually clean, your laundry detergent remove stains, and your disinfectant kill germs are produced by fewer than a dozen major chemical facilities worldwide. This extreme concentration creates a dangerous bottleneck where problems at even one facility can disrupt hundreds of consumer products simultaneously. Currently, several critical chemical plants are undergoing maintenance shutdowns that were postponed during the pandemic and can no longer be delayed without risking catastrophic equipment failures. These industrial facilities require months of downtime to replace aging equipment, upgrade safety systems, and perform maintenance that keeps them operating safely. Unlike a simple manufacturing line that might shut down for a few days, chemical plants require extensive preparation, specialized contractors, and complex restart procedures that can take half a year to complete properly. During these shutdowns, the supply of essential chemicals simply stops, forcing cleaning product manufacturers to either find alternative suppliers at much higher costs or suspend production entirely. Energy costs are delivering another crushing blow to chemical manufacturers. These facilities consume enormous amounts of electricity and natural gas to power the complex reactions that create cleaning compounds. With energy prices experiencing unprecedented volatility, some plants are making the difficult decision to reduce production during peak energy cost periods or shut down entirely when operating costs exceed potential revenue. This creates unpredictable supply disruptions that ripple through every brand that depends on these chemical ingredients. The packaging crisis compounds these production problems in ways that make the shortage even more severe. Those plastic bottles, trigger sprayers, and child-resistant caps that protect and dispense cleaning products are manufactured by specialized companies dealing with their own resin shortages and equipment breakdowns. Even if chemical manufacturers can produce the cleaning compounds, getting them packaged for retail sale has become its own logistical nightmare, creating additional delays and cost increases that ultimately impact product availability. 8. Breakfast cereals and oats. Your morning ritual is about to become significantly more complicated and expensive as the breakfast foods that fuel millions of Americans face unprecedented supply challenges. The cereal aisle that represents comfort and routine for countless families is experiencing disruptions that extend far beyond simple grain shortages, revealing just how complex and fragile modern food manufacturing has become. Modern breakfast cereals bear little resemblance to the simple grain products they once were. Today's cereals are sophisticated nutritional delivery systems fortified with vitamins, minerals, and additives sourced from suppliers across multiple continents. The corn used in cornflakes must meet exacting specifications for moisture content, kernel size, and processing characteristics that regular field corn simply cannot satisfy. Right now, production of this specialty cereal-grade corn has fallen dramatically due to extreme weather conditions across traditional growing regions, creating shortages that cannot be quickly resolved by switching to alternative grain sources. The vitamin and mineral fortification systems that make cereals nutritionally complete depend on pharmaceutical-grade suppliers who manufacture these compounds in specialized facilities. Vitamin B12, iron supplements, folic acid, and other nutrients added to cereals aren't agricultural byproducts, but rather manufactured chemicals requiring complex production processes. These facilities are experiencing their own equipment failures, raw material shortages, and quality control issues that are forcing cereal manufacturers to reformulate products continuously, sometimes changing nutritional profiles without making these alterations obvious to consumers. Oat processing represents another critical vulnerability in breakfast food supply chains. The transformation of raw oats into the flakes used in oatmeal and granola requires specialized equipment that performs precise steaming, rolling, and drying operations. Much of this equipment is decades old, prone to frequent breakdowns, and relies on replacement parts that are no longer manufactured by their original suppliers. Scotland's premium oat-growing regions, which supply many high-end oatmeal brands, are experiencing weather patterns that affect both crop quantity and quality, with much of the harvest failing to meet human consumption standards and being diverted to animal feed instead. The psychological impact of breakfast food shortages cannot be understated. These products represent daily routines and comfort foods that anchor family life, particularly for children who depend on consistency in their morning meals. When favorite cereals disappear or become prohibitively expensive, it disrupts household routines in ways that extend far beyond simple nutrition, affecting everything from family budgets to children's willingness to eat breakfast at all. 9. Frozen convenience foods. The freezer section that has become a lifeline for busy families is facing a convergence of challenges that threaten to transform this convenience into an expensive luxury. The frozen food industry depends on maintaining an unbroken cold chain from production facility to home freezer, and this complex system is currently under more stress than it has ever experienced, with multiple failure points threatening to collapse entire product categories. Refrigerated transportation represents the most critical vulnerability in frozen food distribution. The specialized trucks required to maintain proper temperatures during transport require constant maintenance, expensive fuel, and skilled drivers trained in handling temperature-sensitive cargo. Many trucking companies are abandoning the refrigerated transport sector entirely, choosing instead to focus on regular freight that doesn't require the additional complications and costs associated with maintaining frozen temperatures during increasingly long delivery routes. The driver shortage affecting refrigerated transport is particularly acute because operating these vehicles requires specialized training, additional certifications, and the ability to monitor and maintain complex cooling systems throughout long-haul journeys. Drivers who remain in this sector are commanding premium wages that are forcing up transportation costs across the entire frozen food industry, making many products economically unviable for manufacturers to produce and distribute. Manufacturing facilities that produce frozen foods face their own energy crisis that threatens their ability to maintain operations. These plants require enormous amounts of electricity to power production lines, blast freezers, and massive storage warehouses that must maintain precise temperatures around the clock. Some smaller manufacturers have already implemented temporary shutdowns during peak energy cost periods, while others have permanently closed facilities where electricity costs exceed potential revenue from product sales. The specialized packaging used for frozen foods presents another critical bottleneck. Those cardboard boxes, plastic trays, and protective films that maintain product integrity in freezer environments are produced by manufacturers dealing with material shortages, equipment problems, and the same energy cost pressures affecting other industries. Even minor packaging shortages can halt production of frozen foods because these products cannot be stored or transported without proper protective packaging that prevents freezer burn and contamination. 10. Imported coffee and tea products. The final blow to household staples comes in the form that will hurt millions of Americans most personally, their daily caffeine ritual. Coffee and tea shortages represent more than simple commodity price increases. They threaten the social fabric and daily routines that anchor modern life, while revealing how vulnerable global supply chains have become to climate change and geopolitical instability. Brazil's coffee crisis exemplifies the perfect storm hitting global coffee production. The country that supplies 40% of the world's coffee has endured alternating periods of devastating drought and destructive flooding that have damaged coffee plantations across multiple states. Coffee plants are extraordinarily sensitive to environmental changes, requiring specific temperature ranges, rainfall patterns, and soil conditions that are becoming increasingly rare as climate patterns shift unpredictably. Even trees that survive these extreme weather events often produce beans of inferior quality that fail to meet the standards required for specialty coffee brands. Global coffee commodity markets are responding to these production shortfalls with price volatility not seen in over a decade. Coffee futures are trading at levels that reflect genuine supply scarcity rather than speculative trading, indicating that higher consumer prices are inevitable regardless of other market factors. The situation is compounded by shipping cost increases that have tripled transportation expenses for coffee beans, which represent bulky, heavy cargo that consumes significant container space while offering relatively low value per unit weight. Tea production faces parallel challenges across different geographic regions and growing conditions. The tea gardens of India, Sri Lanka, and Kenya that supply the majority of global tea production are dealing with labor shortages, water scarcity, and changing weather patterns that disrupt the precise timing required for quality tea harvests. Unlike coffee, which can be harvested over extended periods, tea requires picking at specific intervals when leaves reach optimal maturity, making these crops particularly vulnerable to weather disruptions and labor availability issues. Specialty coffee roasters and tea importers are already implementing allocation systems and warning customers about price increases exceeding 30% in some cases. Smaller roasting operations are stopping wholesale orders entirely because they cannot guarantee consistent access to green coffee beans at prices that allow profitable retail sales. The products facing the most severe shortages include single-origin specialty beans, organic and fair trade certified varieties, and premium instant coffee options that require higher-grade raw materials and more complex processing methods.